I used to think betrayal came with warning signs, a slammed door, a scream down the hallway, something you could point to and say, yes, this is where the break began. But mine arrived wrapped in routine, on an otherwise quiet Tuesday afternoon, hidden between overdue utility bills and unpaid prescriptions. I was sitting at my parents' dining table in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina, the same table I helped them refinish after Dad's knee replacement. The wood was still scratched near the edges, worn from decades of holiday dinners, long conversations, and silent sacrifices. The late sun slanted through the window blinds, casting long stripes across a cluttered sea of paper. Insurance forms, copay receipts, medical statements, envelopes from the VA. I was there, like always, to help sort through the chaos. The fridge hummed steadily behind me. A neighbor's dog barked once and fell silent. The air felt still, too still. That's when I noticed it. An envelope, heavier than the rest. Cream-colored, no markings. It wasn't addressed to me, but something about it, the weight, the placement, pulled at me. It sat just crooked enough to seem accidental, yet deliberate. I opened it slowly, fingertips brushing the ridged edge of the flap. The document inside smelled faintly of ink and old air. A will. Their will. I skimmed the first page with a casual familiarity, expecting boilerplate language, but then my eyes landed on line after line: house, retirement savings, bonds, everything, all of it, listed clearly beneath one name: Eliza, my younger sister. My name appeared once. We trust our eldest will understand. That single line punched the breath out of me. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. I blinked, trying to register what I was reading. But the meaning didn't hide in the margins. It sat boldly on the page, silent and brutal. Everything was hers. I leaned back in the chair, eyes still fixed on the paper as if it might rewrite itself, but the truth had already settled in. I remembered the time I canceled my promotion to stay close after Dad's second fall, the year I quietly wired $14,000 to cover the mortgage when they were too proud to say they'd fallen behind. The weekends I spent on hold with insurance companies, balancing their care while Eliza chased wellness retreats in Colorado. Eliza, the free spirit, the baby, the one who always landed softly because I was the invisible wall that broke her fall. She once cried because Mom forgot to pack organic granola for her flight. I once missed 3 job interviews to take Dad to the cardiologist. I never asked for recognition, but I thought, maybe foolishly, that it meant something, that the quiet effort, the thankless hours, the money and time and presence, that it would count in the end. Instead, I was handed the role I'd unknowingly been playing all along, the one who understands, the responsible daughter, the dependable shadow. The scaffolding that held them up, but somehow the roof belonged to someone else. The back door creaked behind me. I quickly folded the will and slid it beneath a pile of unopened mail. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't shaking. But something inside me had shifted. A pressure I hadn't noticed was building finally gave way. Mom walked into the kitchen, humming faintly, her slippers brushing against the tile. She looked up and smiled warmly. "You finished sorting the insurance stuff, sweetheart?" I nodded. Almost. My voice came out steady, but quieter than usual. Like something had drained through my vocal cords and left only resolve. She moved to stir the pot on the stove, humming again as if the world hadn't tilted in the last 10 minutes. I stared at the envelope hidden in the papers, not because I needed more proof, but because a part of me already knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was intention. And they'd made it without me. What would you do if the people you gave everything to decided you weren't even worth a name? The first time I paid the mortgage, I didn't even mention it. Mom had called late one Thursday evening, voice thin and hesitant. "We're just a little behind, sweetheart. Nothing major, just a small float till next month. No urgency, no guilt, just a favor they knew I wouldn't refuse." So I paid. I transferred $2,103.82 from my savings at 11:47 p.m., then sat in the dark staring at the confirmation email as if it might applaud. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere, a dog barked. Inside, all I heard was my own breath and the quiet knowledge that I'd done it again. Eliza was in Costa Rica that week, learning about cacao ceremonies and grounding with the earth. She posted a photo from a hammock, her caption reading, "Healing is unpaid labor." The irony would have been laughable if it hadn't cost me nearly a quarter of my paycheck. But it wasn't a one-time thing. The mortgage hiccup became a pattern, a quiet expectation. Each month, like clockwork, the bank reached out, and I answered without being asked. Meanwhile, Eliza floated from one wellness fad to the next. Ashrams, moon circles, yoga on mountaintops. I was managing prescriptions, scheduling checkups, negotiating insurance rates, keeping the house from slipping into foreclosure, all before logging into my first Zoom meeting of the day. She was the spirit. I was the structure. She painted her vision boards while I patched leaking ceilings. When I brought it up, lightly, just once, Dad sighed like I'd interrupted something sacred. "Your sister's still finding herself," he said. "You're more grounded. You can handle this." Like stability was a punishment I'd agreed to. Like being reliable meant I owed them. There was no thank you, no acknowledgement, just another bill forwarded, another vague message. "Sweetheart, this one's time-sensitive." Another, "You've always been the strong one." That line grated more than I ever let on, because being strong in this family didn't mean you were valued. It meant you were volunteered. Eliza stopped by that spring to reconnect. She glided through the living room barefoot, sipping an oat milk latte she hadn't offered to share, her new mala beads clicking softly as she passed. "I miss being home," she said dreamily, settling onto the couch I helped finance. I looked up from my laptop, taxes open, receipts scattered like leaves on the coffee table. "You ever think about contributing to the mortgage?" I asked gently. Her face crinkled like I'd suggested selling her crystals. "I'm not really in a financial place to give right now," she said, "but I send energy, and I'm always here emotionally." She said it without irony. That night, I added up every wire transfer I'd made over the last year, every cent for the mortgage, the roof repairs, the dental work Dad had postponed too long. The total blinked on the screen like a dare. $18,466.39. I stared at it, then closed the spreadsheet. Not because I was finished, but because some truths echo louder when left unspoken. When Eliza moved into the house, it wasn't framed as moving in. "It's just temporary," Mom said over the phone, like we were discussing leftovers. "She needs a landing pad while she figures things out." The phrase landing pad irritated me more than I expected, like she was a spacecraft and I was concrete. But I didn't push back, not then. Not when Eliza brought over 4 suitcases, 2 plants, and a Himalayan salt lamp that somehow took up an entire end table. Not when she started rearranging furniture, pinning vision boards over framed family photos, or when she turned the den into her healing space and asked me to stop using the treadmill during her morning meditations. "She's sensitive to vibration," Mom explained when I mentioned it. "You've always been more adaptable." There it was again. That word. Always. Like my reliability had been grandfathered in. Eliza's presence quickly expanded like air filling every corner. She started inviting friends over for cacao circles, full moon journaling sessions, healing sound baths. The house smelled like patchouli and sage most days, the kitchen counters cluttered with crystal-infused waters and gluten-free snacks labeled in Sharpie. One night I got home after an exhausting day, dropped my bag by the door, and found a stranger in the living room playing a handpan drum. Eliza waved from the floor, mid-lotus pose. "This is Joaquin. He's helping me realign my sacral chakra." Joaquin didn't look up, just kept drumming. I backed out slowly, afraid if I spoke I might actually scream. What stunned me more than the intrusion was that no one seemed to mind. In fact, Mom started telling people Eliza had really stepped up, that she was grounding the home with good energy. At Easter brunch, Dad even called her our spiritual backbone. I choked on my mimosa. Meanwhile, I was still paying the mortgage, still covering utility bills, still driving Dad to his specialist in another city once a month because Eliza got carsick on highways. No one noticed when I started leaving dinners early. No one said anything when I skipped game night 2 weeks in a row. But when Eliza missed one yoga meetup, Mom texted her 3 times, worried she was burning out. One weekend, I arrived at the house to find the porch strung with fairy lights. Eliza stood barefoot on the welcome mat holding a tray of herbal tea, surrounded by guests I didn't recognize. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping onto the porch. "Oh," she said, as if remembering I existed, "we're having a little gratitude gathering." "For what?" She beamed. "For the space, for growth, for finding home again." And then, without skipping a beat, she added, "Feel free to join or just hang inside. We're trying to keep the energy outside really clear." That night, I sat in the kitchen, alone, sipping lukewarm tea I didn't ask for, staring at the calendar on the fridge. A flyer was pinned next to it. Eliza's Empowerment Circle, weekly Tuesdays, by invitation only. By the 3rd week, she had a Venmo QR code printed on little cards. I found one in the bathroom. She was monetizing the house. I tried to bring it up, carefully, respectfully. I waited until she was alone, no guests, no gongs. "I'm concerned about the number of people coming in and out," I said, "and the fact that you're collecting money in a space I'm still paying for." She blinked slowly, like I'd just spoken in Morse code. "I'm contributing," she said. "Maybe not financially, but energetically. You always approach things so transactionally." I stared at her, stunned. "I'm sorry, are we not talking about money?" She smiled. "You can't put a price on emotional labor." Apparently, I could. My bank's mobile app had a whole tab for it. The next morning, I woke to a group photo posted on Eliza's Instagram. A caption read, "Holding space, anchoring peace, grateful to call this place home." The comment section was full of praise. "You're such a light. They're lucky to have you. This space looks magical. What a blessing you are." I got 0 texts that week. No one asked how I was. No one noticed I'd stopped checking in, that I was showing up less, giving less, speaking less. I became a shadow with a bank account. And the worst part? I let it happen. I let silence wrap around me like an old coat because I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to be the angry sister. I didn't want to ruin the vibe. But the silence was starting to sour, to stretch into resentment, to crack like glass under pressure. They clapped for her every week, called her healer, giver, light. They forgot who kept the lights on. It happened on a quiet Monday, the kind where the light from the blinds stripes the kitchen table, and the world outside feels too still, like it's waiting for something to break. Maura wasn't expecting anything that day, not kindness, not cruelty, just routine. But what she found changed everything. She had come by to drop off some medication refills for her father, Gordon, and double-check the water bill payment. Simple, familiar, mindless tasks, until her gaze landed on a pale blue, leather-bound journal sitting half-tucked beneath a pile of recipe clippings and mail on the counter. She picked it up, recognizing it instantly. It was the journal she had gifted her mother, Lorene, years ago. "To keep your thoughts, dreams, or just grocery lists," she'd said. It had been part of a birthday package, a soft cardigan, some herbal tea, and this journal. Back then, her mother had smiled politely but tucked it away. Maura had assumed it had never been used. But it had. She opened it, not from nosiness, but instinct. A flick of the wrist, a page turning like muscle memory. Her eyes scanned the careful cursive, words written in her mother's unmistakable script. The first few entries were innocent enough. Notes on holiday dinners, small reflections about aging, the occasional mention of a neighbor. But then, around a third of the way through, a line stopped her. Delilah has really stepped up lately. She brings so much warmth into the house. She's the heart of this family now. Maura blinked, read it again, then again. She flipped more pages. We're thinking of formalizing the new will soon. Delilah deserves this. She's been through so much. No mention of the mortgage, no mention of Maura's years of unpaid labor, no nod to the invisible safety net she'd stretched thin over this entire family. She read one final passage. Maura will understand. She always does. She has her own life, her own means. Delilah needs this more. It wasn't even cruel. It was casual, matter of fact, like she wasn't a daughter at all, just an equation to be balanced. Her presence had been processed, categorized, and dismissed, neatly filed under "she'll manage." Her stomach churned. Then, as if the universe wanted punctuation, her phone vibrated in her purse. A new email notification slid onto the screen. Subject: Updated medical budget proposal. From Delilah Rivers. She opened it, pulse spiking. It was the exact spreadsheet Maura had created 6 months ago, column by column, calculation by calculation. Only now, the footer read, "Prepared by Delilah Rivers." No attribution, no mention, just as if Maura had never existed. Her breath caught. She pressed her palm to the counter to steady herself. Upstairs, the creak of floorboards, someone walking across the hallway. Life above her continuing like nothing had shifted, like she wasn't standing in the kitchen as her entire identity unraveled piece by piece. She didn't yell. She didn't confront. She opened the drawer near the fridge and pulled out an old birthday card, a card from her mother dated 3 years back. Inside, it read, "You are our steady hand, our rock. We don't say it enough, but we notice everything you do. You're the reason this house stays standing." The card trembled in her hands. How did that version of her mother become the one who handed everything over to Delilah? Not just the house, but the praise, the credit, the legacy. Maura walked out of the kitchen, through the back door, and stood in the fading afternoon light. Her hands clenched around the card like it might fly away and take her history with it. She took a slow breath and let it go. Then, without hesitation, she drove home. That night, she gathered every financial record she'd kept, mortgage transfers, maintenance invoices, copay receipts, and laid them across her kitchen table. A quiet war room. She snapped photos, filed them into folders, renamed documents with dates and tags, not for revenge, but for clarity. And when she opened a new document on her laptop, she titled it, "Evidence of Absence." Because if her family was going to rewrite the story, she would at least preserve the truth. The air inside the Magnolia Cafe buzzed with warmth and chatter, but to Claire it felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. She arrived exactly on time, neither early nor late, as always, and scanned the booth where her family had already gathered. Her mother waved her over with a practiced smile. Her father gave a distracted nod, and Lana looked radiant, seated like a guest of honor, rather than someone who'd quietly inherited the house Claire had been paying off for years. Claire slid into the booth, carefully folding her coat beside her. A waitress dropped off a basket of warm cornbread, and Claire grabbed one, not out of hunger, but because she needed something to do with her hands. The table talk was light, deliberately light, rising gas prices, a new coffee shop on 6th Street, Aunt Mabel's hip replacement. Then the moment came. Claire didn't raise her voice. She simply asked, "So, about the house?" Lana froze. Her smile faltered. Her hands, so expressive a moment ago, dropped to her lap. Their mother reached for her water glass. Their father pretended to scan the menu again, though they'd already ordered. "I didn't know you found out," Lana said softly. "I didn't ask for the house, Claire, I swear. She trailed off, her voice wilting under the weight of her own guilt. or performance. Claire blinked once, then twice. That line, it was rehearsed, polished to invoke sympathy, not accountability. And yet, you signed your name. Lana looked like she'd been slapped. Their mother jumped in, tone tight but sweet. Lana's been through so much, Claire. She needs stability. You're the dependable one. You've always been able to figure things out. There it was again. The family's favorite refrain. Claire, the dependable one. Translation: the one we can forget. Claire nodded slowly. I've covered the mortgage for 7 years, paid for roof repairs, covered insurance. No one said a word. Her voice didn't crack. It didn't need to. Her stillness said everything. Her father set down his fork. Let's not turn this into a scene. This isn't a scene, Claire replied. It's a history. The silence that followed stretched longer than the gap between dinner and dessert. The waitress returned to ask if they wanted anything else. Everyone shook their heads. Claire excused herself and made her way to the restroom. She didn't need to go. She just needed space, to breathe, to see her own face without everyone else's expectations clouding it. She stared at her reflection. The fluorescent lighting flickered slightly above the mirror. Her own eyes stared back, calm but frayed, the kind of frayed that doesn't unravel until someone pulls the wrong thread. You used my stability as an excuse to betray me, she whispered. No one heard it, but she did, and that mattered more. Back at the table, Lana was dabbing at the corners of her eyes with a napkin. Her mother rubbed her back and offered her a bite of dessert. Claire stood silently at the edge of the booth. I'm heading out, she said. Lana looked up. Claire, please. Claire cut in. You want my forgiveness before you've even earned my honesty. Their father cleared his throat. Let's not dramatize. Claire turned. Dad, I've paid tens of thousands of dollars to keep your house standing. You signed it away and didn't even offer me the courtesy of a conversation. Her voice still wasn't raised. That made it worse. She wasn't angry. She was done. She left before they could respond. In the car, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She turned on the AC and sat for a moment in the hum of the engine. Then she opened her banking app. The mortgage payment was scheduled for the next morning. Her thumb hovered over the toggle. She didn't hit cancel, but she also didn't feel like someone who would keep saying yes. Instead, she added a note in her calendar, decide tomorrow. On your own terms. She drove home in silence. The next morning, Claire woke up to sunlight spilling through half-drawn blinds. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. The weight of that dinner still pressed on her chest like an anchor she hadn't unstrapped. She got up, padded across the hardwood floor of her apartment, and made a cup of coffee. As the pot hissed and sputtered, she opened her phone. The mortgage payment was due in 20 minutes. Her thumb hovered again, and this time, she made a choice. She canceled it. The screen blinked, confirming the change. Just like that, the lifeline she'd held for years had been severed, not in rage, but in resolve. Claire sat on the couch, coffee cooling in her hands, and stared out at the horizon. If they were going to act like she didn't exist, then they could feel her absence. Family secrets surface. By noon, the silence was broken, not by her parents or Lana, but by an email from the mortgage lender. Payment failed. Please confirm account details. Claire stared at the screen, unfazed. Let them feel the same kind of uncertainty they'd left her to sit with, the kind of tension that came from being left out of the most important conversations of her life. A few hours later, her phone rang. Her mother's name flashed across the screen. She ignored it. Then again. Then a text. Mortgage didn't go through. Can you check? Claire replied with a single sentence. Please handle it moving forward. 10 minutes passed, then came the guilt. Claire, we're not sure what's wrong. Your sister's trying to get the money together. Can't you help just this one last time? Claire didn't reply. She turned off notifications and walked to the bedroom. Her heartbeat wasn't loud, but it was steady. When stability becomes a weapon. That night, she dug through a shoebox of old receipts, invoices, and transfer confirmations. She hadn't meant to keep them all, but now they felt like armor. She started organizing them, not for revenge, for record. If the world was going to rewrite the story, she needed her own version typed up and time-stamped. Each scanned document, proof of HVAC repairs, hospital co-pays, the time she covered the broken water heater, went into a folder labeled Evidence of Absence. Claire paused. That title felt sharp, but right. She took my plan and my credit. The next day, an email landed in her inbox, forwarded by a mutual cousin. It was from Lana. A community grant proposal. It was detailed, impressive. A proposal to expand housing access for struggling families, using their parents' house as a model of resilience. Claire blinked. Every chart, every financial model, hers. She cross-referenced her files and found the original budget spreadsheet she'd created months ago when their dad's medical needs skyrocketed. Same fonts, same layout, even the same typo in cell B37. But the signature at the bottom read, "Prepared by Lana Rivers." Claire exhaled slowly. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she drafted a reply, not to Lana, to the community board. "Dear members, please note that the financial planning document submitted under Lana Rivers' name was originally authored by me. Attached are the original files with creation timestamps, email threads, and source data. This is not a complaint, simply a clarification, for the record." She hit send, stepping out of the shadow. By that weekend, whispers had begun. Friends of the family reached out. "Claire, I didn't know everything you did for your parents. I saw that budget file. That was yours, wasn't it?" Claire didn't gloat. She didn't forward more evidence. She simply replied, "I've always been here. They just weren't looking." Narratives can't be controlled forever. On Sunday, the phone rang again. This time it was Lana. Claire stared at the screen. Something told her to answer, so she did. "Hey," Lana said. Her voice was soft. "I guess you saw the grant thing." Claire waited. "I'm sorry, I thought it would help if they saw me as more responsible. I didn't know they'd submit the file without checking." Claire nodded, though Lana couldn't see. "And you didn't correct them either." "No," Lana admitted. "I didn't. I wanted to feel like I had done something real." Silence. "Claire, I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to," Claire said. "Just don't expect me to keep pretending it never happened." And then gently, "You took my credit. But you also took my silence for granted. That's over." Lana didn't argue. "I understand," she whispered. Claire ended the call not with anger, but clarity. She can have the house, not my peace. Later that evening, Claire opened the drawer where she'd stored the house key. She held it for a long moment. The metal felt cold, foreign. Then she dropped it in an envelope and mailed it to her parents. No note, no message, just the final gesture in a story she was done carrying. And when she closed the door to her apartment, she didn't lock it to keep people out. She locked it to keep herself in. Claire hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days, not because she was angry, anger had long since burned itself out, but because she needed to hear her own thoughts without interruption, without spin. Then the message came. From her cousin Jenna. "Saw your parents' Facebook post. Wow. Hope you're okay. That wasn't fair." Claire clicked the link Jenna had sent, a post from her mother's page, shared with cheerful filters and soft background music. Photo, Lana standing in the living room, Claire's former sanctuary, smiling with her arms around their parents. A caption beneath it, "Sometimes we don't see the quiet heroes in our lives. Lana gave up everything to care for us. This home is a symbol of her love. We're so proud of our youngest." Family. First, blessed. Claire read it 3 times. They had rewritten her history. Again. There was no mention of the mortgage she'd paid, no reference to the budget she built, no acknowledgement of the job offers she'd declined just to stay close. Lana was now cast as the caretaker, the savior, the reliable one. She had been replaced in her own narrative. Claire didn't comment. She didn't reply to Jenna, but she opened the Evidence of Absence folder on her desktop and stared at it for a long moment. She wasn't going to fight publicly. She didn't need applause or vindication. But she wouldn't be silent either. Rewriting the past doesn't erase the truth. The next morning, she sat down with a cup of coffee and began writing, not a rebuttal, not a social media post, but something firmer. She drafted a private message to her parents. I saw your post about Lana. It's fine if you want to celebrate her, but please don't do it by erasing what I've done. She attached one image, the mortgage statement with her name on it, 7 years of payments, lined up in rows like witnesses, no commentary, just truth. 2 hours later, her mother replied, a single line. We never meant to hurt you, Claire. We're just proud of both of you. Claire closed the message. Proud? That word felt hollow now, like trying to seal a wound with gauze made of smoke. Being erased is a different kind of grief. That afternoon, Claire drove to the park near her apartment. She walked the gravel path around the lake, the cool spring breeze tugging gently at her jacket. She thought about all the ways her presence had been convenient, but never celebrated. She was the one who made phone calls, filled out forms, paid bills, but she wasn't the one they posed with in photos. She wasn't the one they boasted about. The quiet daughter is often seen as stable, but sometimes stable is just another word for forgettable. Claire stopped walking. The weight of that realization rooted her to the ground. She let it settle in, not fighting it. And then she pulled out her phone and wrote a note to herself. I existed. I mattered. I kept the roof over their heads, even when they couldn't see me under it. The lie wasn't just theirs. It was mine too. That night, Claire sat in her apartment and reread the grant proposal Lana had submitted using her plan. Despite everything, it was a good proposal. Maybe even a great one. And that truth stung more than she expected. Because Claire realized that the lie her family had told wasn't the only one. She had believed one too. She'd told herself that being needed was the same as being loved, that doing everything right would protect her from being overlooked. But love doesn't always follow effort, and value doesn't always equal visibility. Sometimes families choose the story that feels most flattering to tell, not the one that's truest. Silence was my armor, but it became a cage. In the days that followed, Claire didn't respond to more messages. She let her silence say everything it needed to. But she also began to think differently. What would it look like to stop playing the role of silent strength? What if she started telling her own story, out loud? A letter to the next daughter like me. So she wrote one. A letter. Not for her family, not even for Lana, but for the next daughter out there. The one who pays the bills, who keeps the peace, who stays quiet so others don't get uncomfortable. The one who holds up the roof while everyone else redecorates beneath it. Her words flowed easily. Dear you, if you've ever sat in silence while they handed someone else the credit, if you've been called dramatic for finally speaking up, if you've been asked to keep giving even after they forgot your name on the deed, you're not invisible, you're not selfish, you're not wrong to walk away. Claire signed it, saved it, and sent it to herself. One day, maybe she'd publish it. Maybe she'd speak it aloud in a room full of daughters like her. But for now, she tucked it away. Final scene. They got a home. I got my voice. The next weekend, Claire passed by her old street. Out of habit, maybe, or just curiosity. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. There were flowers on the porch, a new welcome mat, a fresh coat of paint, Lana's car in the driveway, a sign of a new beginning, for them. But Claire didn't stop. She didn't need to. Because her new beginning had already started. And this time she wasn't asking for permission. Claire hadn't planned on doing anything drastic that week. She'd intended to focus on work, maybe take a weekend drive to clear her head. But plans shift when betrayal becomes public. She first heard about the article on Monday morning. A message popped up from a former coworker. Just read the piece about your sister. Powerful stuff. You must be proud. Claire blinked. What piece? She clicked the link. A local news outlet had published a glowing feature. Youngest daughter's sacrifice keeps family together. It detailed Lana's relentless dedication to her aging parents, how she moved back in, paid their bills, coordinated care. Claire's eyes scanned faster, breath tightening. Quotes from their mother, photos of the house, mentions of hardship, paragraphs describing Lana's selflessness. No mention of Claire, not once. The article praised the youngest daughter as the family's backbone. It ended with a quote from their father. "She's given us everything. We'd be lost without her." Claire stared at that line for a long time. Her pulse didn't race, her fingers didn't tremble, but something behind her eyes went quiet, an internal click, like a lever being pulled. Public praise, private erasure. She reread the piece 3 times. She wasn't surprised, not anymore, but she was done pretending it didn't sting. By lunch, more messages arrived. A cousin she hadn't spoken to in years texted, "What a story! Your sister is such a role model. You're lucky to have her." Claire didn't reply. Instead, she opened her laptop. She pulled up the digital folder she'd named Evidence of Absence. Inside were years of receipts, documents, mortgage statements, all with her name, her money, her effort. She compiled a new file. She titled it, Counter-Narrative, Full Financial Record, 2014 to 2023. Let the record show. Claire didn't write a scathing post. She didn't share the file on social media. She emailed it to one person, her parents' estate attorney. Subject line, Updated beneficiary information requested. Body, attached are verified financial records from the last 9 years, demonstrating my personal contributions toward the mortgage, medical costs, and household maintenance at 4531 Maple Ridge Lane. Please update all documentation accordingly. I am no longer participating in this property's expenses. I request written confirmation that my name has been removed from all shared financial instruments by end of month. She CC'd her accountant and blind copied herself. No further action required, just documentation. The family group chat explodes. It only took a day. Tuesday night, the family group chat, silent for weeks, lit up. Lana. Claire, what did you do? Dad. Is this true? You sent our lawyer a list of complaints? Mom. We don't understand where all this resentment is coming from. You've always been so strong. Claire didn't respond. She watched. Cousin Jared chimed in. Wait, is that why I got tagged in that file? Claire, this is serious. Why not just talk to them? Aunt Rhonda. I had no idea you were paying that much. Your parents never said. Lana again. You're making a scene over something that could have been handled in private. Claire finally replied, I handled it in private, for 9 years. Now it's public, because you made it public first. Silence. When the apology comes too late. 2 days passed, then a letter arrived by mail. Claire recognized the handwriting immediately, her mother's, precise and slanted. Inside, Claire, we didn't realize how much you'd carried. That's on us. I know this doesn't fix things, but I want you to know we're sorry. We thought you didn't need recognition because you never asked for it. But maybe that was unfair. You've always been there. That was never invisible to me. I just didn't say it enough. Love, Mom. Claire read it once. She placed it in the same drawer as the letter from years before, the one where her mother called her the glue. Same pen, same hand, opposite sentiment. The power of being seen. That weekend, Claire went to the farmer's market. No big plan, just a desire to walk somewhere where no one needed anything from her. A stranger approached her by the flower stall. Claire Rivers. She hesitated. Yes. The woman smiled warmly. I read your response to the grant submission, the one about the financial plan. You have no idea how many of us needed to see that. The way quiet people get erased, the way giving too much becomes expected. Claire blinked. Thank you. I wasn't trying to go public. I just didn't want to disappear. The woman nodded. You didn't. Not anymore. Claire didn't check the group chat anymore. She'd muted it the night of the explosion, not out of spite, but peace. If they needed her, they could pick up the phone, but no one called. That week was the quietest her inbox had been in years. No automated texts asking about utility bills, no reminder emails from her parents, no forwarded appointment notices for checkups, prescriptions, or maintenance schedules. Silence, Claire realized, had never felt so much like a message. She wasn't being included. She wasn't even being ignored. She was being rewritten. Rewriting the family storyline. On Thursday, she logged into Facebook for the first time in weeks, not to post, just to check. Her mother had shared another status update, a picture of the front porch with autumn leaves arranged in symmetrical piles around the swing Claire had installed 3 years ago. The caption read, "Fall always brings gratitude. So thankful for our youngest daughter who's stepped up and made this house a home." Claire stared at the post. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. "Lana is such a blessing. She has such a generous heart. You raised a wonderful daughter." Claire wasn't angry. Not anymore. She just took a screenshot, added it to the evidence of absence folder, and labeled it Narrative Management, Phase 2. I am not a ghost. Friday night, Claire attended a small dinner hosted by her friend Monica. A few close friends, a potluck-style meal, no family in sight. Over roast chicken and roasted Brussels sprouts, the conversation turned to family drama. Not in a petty way, just honest sharing. Monica mentioned her brother asking for another small loan to float his latest idea. Someone else shared about being cut out of a will after moving states. Claire was quiet for a while. Then, for the first time, she told them the whole story. The mortgage, the will, the swing, the article, the email. There was a long silence at the end. Then Monica reached for her hand. "That's not invisible, Claire. That's theft dressed up in gratitude." Gratitude can be a cage. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Her mind kept looping one sentence from the dinner conversation. That's theft dressed up in gratitude. Because wasn't that exactly what had happened? Every thank you, every quiet nod of appreciation, every "you're the glue" letter had come in exchange for more labor, more silence, more yes. And now that she'd said no, they didn't say thank you anymore. They said dramatic, ungrateful, difficult, as if gratitude were only valid when paired with compliance. Claire sat at her kitchen table, opened her laptop, and wrote a single sentence at the top of a new document. Gratitude isn't love when it's only offered to keep you quiet. The call that came too late. Sunday morning, her phone rang. The caller ID said, "Dad." Claire stared at it. She let it ring twice, then 3 times before answering. "Hello?" A pause. Then his voice, tentative, scratchy. "Claire, I thought maybe we could talk." She didn't answer immediately. He tried again. "I know things got heavy, but you don't have to do this alone. You're still part of this family." Claire inhaled. "Dad, I was never trying to leave the family. I was trying to stop being treated like an assistant with a joint bank account. I didn't mean—" "I know, that's the problem." Silence stretched. Then she added, "I'm not angry, but I'm not walking backwards." He was quiet again. "I miss you," he said finally. Claire didn't reply. Not yet. Not a performance, a boundary. The next day, Claire received a handwritten invitation in the mail. A Thanksgiving dinner, hosted at the family home. Theme, new traditions, old gratitude. Lana's name was listed as the co-host. There was a note at the bottom, penned by her mother. "It would mean the world to have you there. You've always been part of the heart of this home." Claire set the card down on the counter. She didn't tear it up, didn't RSVP either. She wasn't sure yet. Because she didn't want to show up to perform forgiveness. She wanted to show up and be real. That decision would take time. But now she knew she had it. It was a Thursday evening when Claire stood in front of the mirror and realized she no longer recognized the woman staring back. The reflection wore strength like armor, but her eyes, steady as they seemed, held a quiet kind of grief. Not the grief of loss, but the grief of clarity. The understanding that some bonds, no matter how deep the roots, simply weren't built to nourish. Earlier that day, a padded envelope had arrived in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single house key, a printed real estate flyer, and a short handwritten note from her father. "Thought you might want a keepsake. House closes next week." Claire stared at the key. It was the same one she'd carried on her chain for a decade, a symbol of responsibility she'd quietly accepted. Now it was being returned like a borrowed sweater, with no thanks, no acknowledgement, just closure stamped in ink. She didn't cry. She placed the key on her entryway table, next to the ceramic bowl that used to catch her car keys after long drives from her parents' house. She hadn't visited since the email, since she stopped answering group chats, since the narrative finally cracked, facing the truth alone. Claire didn't attend the open house. She saw it online, of course, staged photos with fresh flowers on the windowsills, her mother's handwriting still visible on the whiteboard calendar in the hallway, her own handwriting, she realized, still labeled the breaker box. It didn't sting like she expected. It didn't feel like a betrayal anymore. It felt like a chapter ending. She drove by one afternoon, not to linger or grieve, but to make peace. The front lawn was trimmed. A "sold" sign tilted in the flower bed she'd once dug herself. A wind chime twinkled on the porch, one she hadn't hung. Claire rolled down the window, let the breeze in, and whispered, "I release you." She meant the house, the history, the hollow promises. Then she drove home, the unexpected invitation. That weekend, her phone buzzed with a calendar request from an unknown address. Family meeting, Saturday 2 p.m. Location, Neutral Grounds Cafe. Claire hesitated. It wasn't from her parents. It wasn't from Lana. The sender was Rachel, her cousin, one of the few who hadn't taken sides. "They want to talk," Rachel texted separately. "This time they might actually listen." Claire showed up, not out of hope, but out of curiosity. Neutral Grounds smelled like citrus and cinnamon. The back table was already claimed. Her mother sat rigid, her father quiet. Lana looked tired. No dramatics, no tears, just stillness. Her mom was the first to speak. "Claire, we sold the house. It's final. We used part of the proceeds to pay off your contributions." She slid an envelope across the table. Claire didn't touch it. Her father cleared his throat. "We also signed the legal release. You're no longer tied to any financials." Claire nodded. "Thank you." Lana finally spoke. "You were right. I took more than I gave. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say that." Claire studied their faces. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt calm. "This isn't about repayment," she said. "This is about respect and boundaries. I needed you to see me as more than a fallback plan." Her mom reached out, tentative. "We do now. We just saw the quiet and assumed it meant consent." Claire smiled faintly. "Silence isn't agreement. Sometimes it's just the last resort." Healing doesn't beg for applause. The meeting ended without hugs, no promises to get back to normal. But Claire left with something better: space. On her drive home, she passed her old university campus. She remembered her thesis presentation in that brick building, how she presented charts and graphs with quiet confidence, how no one from her family showed up that day, and yet she'd still built a life, without applause, without a cheering section. That night, Claire pulled out a fresh journal. On the first page, she wrote, "Being seen is not the same as being showcased. I don't need their praise. I need my peace." She slept well for the first time in weeks. Claire hadn't planned to return to the family lawyer's office, not after everything. But 3 weeks after the cafe meeting, a certified envelope arrived. Inside was a notice. The final review of the estate documents was scheduled for Thursday, and all involved parties were invited. Technically optional. Symbolically, not so much. She didn't reply right away. The document sat on her kitchen counter for 2 days, next to a cooling mug of chamomile tea and an unopened letter from her University Alumni Association. On Thursday morning, Claire woke early. She didn't dress for confrontation. No heels, no crisp blazer, just jeans, a soft oatmeal sweater, and the locket her grandmother had once given her, the only family heirloom that held warmth without conditions. Facing the past on neutral ground. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and lemon disinfectant. Claire arrived 5 minutes early. The receptionist gave her a quiet nod, like they remembered her, but weren't sure if they should smile. Inside the conference room, her parents were already seated. Lana was by the window, twisting a silver ring on her finger. No one said anything until the attorney entered. He was old school, with rimless glasses and a yellow legal pad. "Let's begin," he said, nodding once at Claire. "Thank you all for attending." He reviewed the documents aloud, line by line. The estate had been divided, equal parts this time. The financial obligations Claire had covered were acknowledged and accounted for. Lana's name was listed as next of kin for medical proxy. Claire's was not. No one objected. No one asked to change it. When the meeting ended, Claire stood to leave. Her mother reached for her coat sleeve gently. "Thank you for coming." Claire nodded. "I came for myself." A garden grown from boundaries. That Saturday, Claire visited the community garden near her apartment. She hadn't been in months. Her little corner plot had gone to weeds, but she still kept the key to the tool shed on her keychain. She worked in silence, pulling dead vines from the trellis, replanting sage and marigolds. An older woman in a wide-brimmed hat passed by and gave her a thumbs up. Claire smiled. Dirt streaked across her forearm, sweat gathering under her collar. There was something sacred in tending to things that didn't ask anything back. Afterward, she sat on the edge of the raised bed, watching bees float from flower to flower. No calls, no emails, no obligations. Just the buzz of life continuing on its own terms. The message that meant something. That evening, she got a text from Rachel. "Just thinking of you. I know none of this was fair, but I'm proud of how you handled it. You didn't blow things up. You just lit a path out." Claire stared at the screen, then typed back, "I'm learning silence isn't surrender, it's space, and I get to choose what I fill it with now." An offer on her own terms. 2 days later, an email arrived in her inbox from a local nonprofit. Subject: Invitation to join our financial empowerment board. Claire blinked at the sender. She'd once spoken at a panel for them, years ago, long before the family unraveling. Apparently, someone had remembered her spreadsheet breakdowns, her clear-eyed advice on budgeting and caregiving. They wanted her to join the board, not because of her family name or any connection, because of her work. She didn't hesitate. She replied yes, letting go without losing herself. At sunset, Claire took a walk through her neighborhood. The leaves had begun to turn, that early autumn gold brushing the treetops. Children raced bikes past her. A couple argued gently in Spanish on their porch. Life unfolding. She passed a yard where someone had just planted a sapling, a tiny tree staked upright with rope and love. She stopped, reached into her coat pocket, and felt the old house key, the one she still hadn't thrown away. This time she walked to a nearby riverbank and dropped it into the water. It sank without ceremony, without resistance. She didn't need to carry it anymore. 2 months after the house sold, Claire found herself walking along the bay at golden hour. The sky was streaked with burnt orange and lavender, the kind of quiet drama that made you believe the world still had poetry in it, even when people didn't. She had rented a small 2-bedroom bungalow in Sausalito. Not fancy, not modern. But the back porch overlooked the water, and the front door stuck just a little when the fog rolled in, just enough to remind her it was real, imperfect, and hers. The move was a choice, not an escape, not a victory lap, but a shift, a declaration that she would now build something from her own blueprint, something with boundaries and breath. Simplicity is not emptiness. Her mornings were simple now. Eggs, coffee, sunlight. The ceramic bowl that used to hold keys now cradled seed packets. She planted rosemary by the window and let the scent fill the house. She taught budgeting workshops at the library every other week, volunteered twice a month at a financial literacy center for caregivers. People asked how she had the time. She didn't explain. Not everything sacred demands a press release. One last conversation. On a Sunday afternoon, her phone buzzed with a call from Lana. Claire stared at the name. She could ignore it. No one would blame her. but she answered. "Hey." Lana's voice was soft. "Do you have a minute?" Claire stepped outside. The water sparkled in the distance. "I just wanted to tell you I'm moving too," Lana said. "Not far, but I need a fresh start." Claire let that settle. "That's good." There was a pause. Then Lana added, "I've started paying off the counseling fees. Mom and Dad don't know. I just thought you should." Claire didn't say thank you, didn't say she was proud, just said, "I hope it helps." Lana didn't ask for more. From dependable to free. Claire once believed her role in life was to be the pillar, the one who paid quietly, fixed invisibly, and smiled politely through being overlooked. But somewhere between the final mortgage payment and the unopened envelope of apology, something had shifted. She hadn't become cold. She had become clear. Clarity didn't shout. It didn't slam doors. It simply stopped opening them to people who mistook your kindness for currency. A letter to herself. That night, Claire wrote a letter, not to her parents, not to Lana, but to herself. You didn't need to earn love by disappearing. You are not better for having endured quietly. You are worthy of rest, of space, of ease. It is not selfish to let go of what drains you. It is sacred. She folded the note and slipped it inside the journal where she now kept memories that mattered. Not receipts, not proof. Just peace. The final turn of the key. 3 weeks later, Claire was asked to speak at a women's empowerment event downtown. The keynote speaker canceled last minute, and the organizer, someone who had read one of Claire's blog posts, called in a rush. "We know it's last minute," she said, "but your voice is exactly what people need to hear." Claire stood behind the podium that Saturday, the lights warm on her face, the microphone gently humming. She told her story. Not all the details, not the bitterness, just the truth. How she gave too much, lost herself in service, and found clarity not in confrontation, but in walking away with grace. When she finished, the room was quiet for a heartbeat. Then someone clapped, then a second. And then the room stood. Claire didn't cry. She smiled, and in that moment, she knew, this voice, this life, this peace. She had chosen it. If this story touched you, subscribe to Secret Revenge, because some revenge needs no knives, no screaming. Just one spotlight, one shining nameplate, and someone they once dismissed, rising, brilliant and unshaken. See you in the next story.